Hi, everyone. For those that don't know me, my name is Julie Phan. I am a full-time practicing optometrist, and I also actively invest in real estate for the last 2 years. I currently own 8 rental properties, one of it being a turnkey rental property, which is actually going to be the topic of today's presentation, how to invest in turnkey rental properties. The second half of this talk, I'm going to bring in Merv Plank. He is the CEO of Alliance Wealth Builder. He specializes in turnkey rental properties. Merv has been in the real estate business for over 30 years, and he has a wealth of knowledge. And I'm super excited to hear what he's got to say for all of us today. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in and talk about a real estate investment strategy that has become quite popular in the last few years, and that is investing in turnkey rental properties. So the reason why I wanted to do this session today is to help new investors or even experienced investors who are looking to buy turnkey properties protect themselves when utilizing this investment strategy, and also help them understand if turnkey investment is the right investment for them. So everyone has different risk tolerance, time, resources. So you really must decide if this investment strategy best fits your needs and your abilities. What I've realized is the most difficult part of real estate investing is, number one, finding where to invest, and two, finding the time to invest. So that's why I wanted to spend this time going over how a busy professional like myself and yourself can start building their real estate portfolio passively. And one of that strategy is to partner up with a quality turnkey provider to acquire turnkey rental properties. All right, so what are turnkey rental properties? So just like buying a house that you will live in, a turnkey house is where you purchase a fully rehabbed house, receive the keys, turn it, and no work is needed to live in that house. So essentially, it's buying a house that has been flipped by another investor. In real estate investing, a turnkey property is a house or an apartment that you buy from a turnkey provider, and that house has been fully renovated and can be immediately rented out, or it may already come with a tenant in place. The turnkey provider's goal is to make that entire real estate investment process as simple as possible. So all you really need to do is purchase the house, turn the key, and enjoy immediate cash flow. Let's dive into what's done for you when you buy a turnkey rental property. First, you want to partner up with a reputable turnkey provider. Keep in mind, not all turnkey providers are the same. And I will have Merv go over the differences with you in his presentation. So the turnkey provider will work with you to help you do these 4 things. It's acquiring the property, rehab it, place a quality tenant, and connect you with their property management team. So let's go over the steps in a little bit more detail so that you understand. So acquisition, the turnkey provider will already have purchased this property either on the MLS, an auction, or through a wholesaler. They should have done all the market research to ensure that this is a good and growing area with a good tenant pool. So all the hard work of market research, rent analysis, comps has already been done for you. There are some turnkey providers that will not sell properties in certain neighborhoods because they attract tenants of lower quality. You may find that some turnkey providers may sell higher end properties. They may cost more, but they are in much better neighborhoods, thus providing you with a more quality tenant pool, which translates to lower risk and more stable cash flow. Secondly, they send out their crew to rehab the property and get it rent ready. Keep in mind, you want to make sure that you find a turnkey provider that will provide a quality rehab and not just put lipstick on a pig. And what that means is some will advertise a turnkey property, but in fact, all they did was put new paint, new flooring over a house that may be essentially falling apart. In a true turnkey property, they should make sure to address the 4 major components of the property, such as the roof, the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical. By addressing these 4 components, as well as the cosmetic repairs, you will have a property that is rent ready for placing your tenants. So why is rehab important? You definitely don't want to buy a turnkey rental property that has a roof leak or plumbing issue. So make sure before you purchase this property, send out a third-party inspector to ensure that all items that the turnkey company promises that are new are indeed new. As an out-of-state investor, you can easily fall victim to fraudulent claims. So quick tip, ask for their scope of work and have an inspector come out just to verify that all the items on that scope of work has been completed and completed to code. So once it's rehab, the turnkey provider will now have their in-house property management team market that property for tenant placement. You'll want to know what their tenant screening looks like, how they market their properties, and how long their lease lasts. You can also ask about what their vacancy rate is as well. You will then be connected with a property manager that will now handle all your rent collections, handle maintenance calls, any lease renewals, and of course, any evictions if need be. So in summary, a turnkey provider is essentially a one-stop shop for passive real estate investors who want to build their real estate portfolio. All right, so you're probably thinking, wow, turnkey investing is super easy. I'll just write them a check and I have myself a cash flowing rental property. Well, not quite. Like all investments, nothing is truly passive besides putting your money in your 401k. And secondly, no investment comes risk-free. So even though turnkey providers advertise a one-stop shop for your real estate investments, you still need to put in some work. Not everything is going to be done for you. So here are a few examples. Number one, you'll need to make sure you pay your mortgage on time. Sounds easy, right? So how about property taxes? Sometimes when the taxes are not escrowed into your mortgage, you may actually lose track of when they're due, especially if you have more than one property. So just make a simple note of when to pay your tax bills. Secondly, when the property becomes vacant, make sure to transfer utilities to your name, especially in the winter months. If that property stays vacant and then utilities are turned off, you're going to find yourself faced with a big bill fixing a burst frozen pipe, especially if you invest in the Midwest. Also, lawn care. If that property is vacant, make sure to schedule lawn care during the springtime. Overgrown lawns can incur city fines, and you definitely don't want to get in trouble with the city if you're investing out of state. Quick tip, these two items can be easily managed by your property manager. So just send them an email once your property becomes vacant, and they can handle the lawn care and also put utilities in their name for you. But at the end of the day, you really have to initiate that request. Lastly, do your due diligence, and I cannot stress this enough. Turnkey companies will always advertise a rosy picture of their investment properties, as their number one goal is to sell you their property. So make sure you understand how to run cash flow numbers when you vet these deals. Ensure that your rehabs are done correctly, and also keep track of all monthly income and expenses, and do not wait until the end of the year. So as much as turnkey rental properties sound appealing and easy, there is still much work that you yourself as the investor have to contribute to make sure that it is a sound investment. So next I'm going to go over 5 quick tips that are important when researching turnkey companies and turnkey properties. The first one, of course, is to do your research and perform all due diligence. Due diligence just means doing your homework before buying real estate. That homework can include learning more about the neighborhood of prospective properties that you're looking at, the trends in the market value. Is it an area that is appreciating or an area that people are leaving? And also look at the popularity of the area with renters. Keep in mind that every state is different, and so is every city. However, I've found out that some markets, real estate can be very street by street. That means a property on one side of the street can be in a war zone, while a property on the other side of the street can be next to $1 million homes. So some investors choose to visit the properties on a regular basis, meet with a property management company in person, drive around the neighborhood, talk to locals if you can. And if you can't jump on an airplane, jump on a phone call with them. And you want to talk to local investors, local realtors. Very easily, you can do a street view of your property to see what's around. You can look at the crime rates on Trulia. Basically, what you're doing is see what is in the area and what others that have more expertise than you say about that area. Essentially, you just have to do what you need to do to understand your investment better as an out-of-state investor. Also, remember, not all turnkey providers are the same. Interview, vet, meet them if you can. They are essentially your partners in this real estate journey, meaning they should understand your needs and provide you with an investment that will be performing well. The two main problems that I've come across with turnkey real estate investing is number one, poor rehab, and number two, poor property management. The poor rehab can be caught during the initial phase of the purchase where you send out your inspector. But once you've already bought the property, you want to make sure that your property manager is top notch. Most turnkey companies will promise you a tenant placed at closing, but be wary that because of that promise, they may just place anyone there. So before purchasing a property, interview the property manager, ask about their vacancy rate, how they screen their tenants, and how do they handle repairs. Are there, do they charge a surcharge when they send out maintenance? So all these are really good questions when you interview property managers, especially ones that is already being placed for you when you buy these turnkey properties. As a new investor, find a company that will, answer all your questions quickly and just make sure they get the job done right the first time. Lastly, talk to past investors, especially those who invested several years ago with this turnkey provider. Ask them how their investment property is going and their experience with that turnkey provider. Essentially, you're hiring a partner, a new team member, so you want to make sure that what they say is actually true. All right, secondly, if you are not paying cash, make sure to get your finances in order and get pre-qualified before you look for a property. That way you're not wasting anyone's time. Some turnkey companies will have a preferred lender. Since they work with these lenders regularly, the lender will understand the turnkey process much better, such as the down payment that's required, inspection process, appraisal process, and also title companies that they will be using as well. Some turnkey companies only take cash offers, and I try to avoid these, especially as a new investor. Cash offers, cash transactions don't have the safety net of the banks underwriting the deals and doing their proper due diligence, such as inspections and appraisals. However, if you do decide to pay cash, make sure you do your own proper underwriting, get an inspector out there, and also make sure you do an appraisal just to make sure that you are not overpaying for a property. So tip number 3, run your own numbers. Most turnkey providers will provide you with a pro forma based on purchase price and rents. They will also give a breakdown of the estimates of the mortgage payments if you choose to finance your properties, and also provide you with an estimate of the property insurance and taxes. In this nice little spreadsheet that you'll receive, you'll see 2 important numbers, and that is cash flow and cash on cash return. Cash flow is the amount of money you have left over every month after all expenses and reserves. Pretty easy to calculate. Secondly, cash on cash return by definition is the amount of cash flow you've achieved in 1 year divided by the amount of money you've invested initially. So let's say you have $200 a month in cash flow. That will translate to $2,400 a year in total cash flow. Now, if you spent $20,000 to acquire that property, which is the down payment and the closing costs, your cash on cash return is just $2,400 divided by $20,000, which is the amount of money you invested, which equates to 12% cash on cash return. Most investors aim for a cash on cash of at least 8% minimum as it matches the stock market. So some may argue that they prefer a cash on cash return of 20% or higher, but unless you're doing a deal where you bought a distressed property and then rehabbed it yourself, achieving a 20% return in a turnkey property is actually very uncommon, unless that property is in an area where rents are about 2% of the purchase price. So 1% of the purchase price of rents would mean if the purchase price is $100,000, then rent would be $1,000. Or if you're in a 2% market, if the purchase price is $100,000, then rent would be $2,000. And again, finding a turnkey property that has a 2% rent rule is very uncommon unless they are in C or D, C minus or D class areas. So the numbers in a 20% cash on cash return may look really good on paper, but they can result in really risky, stressful investment just because these areas are just not very good areas and they don't demand quality tenants. So in summary, make sure you understand how to read their pro forma, how to perform your own calculations so you can cross-check, so that way you can be more prepared when you vet these deals when they do come your way. All right, tip number 4, check on your property regularly. Yes, it is a passive investment, but it is your money and also your asset. Remember, it is not their asset. So turnkey providers and property managers will not care as much as you ever will. I recommend that you make it an effort to look over the monthly report. Do you see any reoccurring repairs? How about late rents? Is there a trend in late rents? Did the tenant lose their job? These are really important questions to ask your property manager, and then have them come up with a strategy to get your property performing better. So get on the phone with them. Don't wait until the end of the year and go crazy on your PM when you find out that, so-and-so has not paid rent for X amount of months and the toilet's been leaking. So it really is a team approach as well. So communication is really a key to make this a successful investment property for you, but also a successful relationship between you and your turnkey provider. And the last tip number 5, do it again. If you've had success and you feel that you and the turnkey providers are a great match and you feel comfortable in investing in this market, why not repeat the process? You've done it once. It will be a little easier the next time around. Remember though, each property has its own risk, as you'll have different tenants, also maybe in a different location, but the same variable remains, which is your property manager and your turnkey provider. So my tip to you is to find an excellent team that will help you weather through this storm, as they will be your resource for maintaining a positive return on your investment. Lastly, make a goal. Be realistic and create a plan that you will execute that will help you buy your first real estate deal. I remember when I first bought my first rental property, I probably was in analysis paralysis for months before I took my first step. And eventually I did, and I got my feet wet and bought a turnkey rental property. So remember, the first step is always the hardest, and it always starts with just one property. So, are turnkey rental properties for you or for me? Well, first off, turnkey investment is not for everyone. Now, what if you're a busy professional, let's say an optometrist, working 5 days a week, running your own private practice, taking care of your kids, and really do not want to add the time to read books, managing contractors, etc. You just want to hire a company to do it all for you. Well, if that's the case, turnkey rental properties can be a good option for you. So here are just a few reasons why many investors choose to purchase a turnkey rental property. So I'm just going to go over it very briefly because they're pretty self-explanatory. Number 1, you live in an expensive market that don't cash flow well, and you want to invest long distance in order to achieve better cash-on-cash return. Secondly, you have a full-time job, you have a family, you enjoy traveling, and this occupies most of your time, so you really don't have time to manage a rental property thousands of miles away. When I mean managing, I mean finding a property, getting bids for properties, finding a property manager, placing a tenant. Okay. And number 3, you're beginning your journey in real estate investing, and you really just want to learn the fundamentals without being bombarded with more advanced skills such as rehabbing and finding tenants. So it's a first step into learning about real estate investing is to partner up with a turnkey provider. Number 4, you don't have any knowledge of the market trend, don't know how to rehab houses, and you just really don't want to learn because you're so busy. And because you don't have the knowledge and you don't have time to learn, this will increase your risk of having a poor performing asset. So these type of investors, again, choose to partner with someone who's more experienced, such as a turnkey provider. And lastly, you have no interest. You have no interest in investing. You don't have a lot of time. You don't want to put in any effort. You essentially just want cash flow in your mailbox, and we call it mailbox money. So in comparison to BRRRRs, turnkey properties will not gain the equity from your hands-on approach like a BRRRR would. They do, however, still provide steady cash flow, just like any other solid real estate investment strategy. The passive nature of just purchasing an already cash flowing rental property like a turnkey rental property is mainly the selling point here for most investors when they do buy a turnkey rental property. Okay, so let's go over who turnkey rental properties are not for. The major downside to turnkey property is that typically they are priced fairly close to market value, if not already at market value, since they are already fully rehabbed. Secondly, some people don't want or don't have any desire to let other people control their investment. They want to be involved in the entire process 100%. They want to find their own, flooring decor, their own paint color, place their own tenant, do their own bids, whatever the case may be. They don't want to let go of that control. Now, for those that don't want to spend the premium of buying a property at market value and also want to do the rehab and placing the tenants yourself, you have to ask yourself if your time is worth the cost that you're going to be saving. So here's an example. So if you pay $25,000 for a piece of distress or junk property that needs massive rehab, you're going to be investing a lot of your time into that. You're going to be taking on a lot of risk, especially if it's the first time you've ever purchased an investment property, more or less if you buy it out of state, and even more risk. And then you'll also fork up a lot more money when you make these mistakes as well. So if you compare all of that to the same property, but it's fully turnkey and it's priced at $75,000, are you really saving that much money? Once you've considered all the time you put into it and also all the money that you may have lost from all the lessons that you had to learn. So definitely something to consider. So run your numbers. I would recommend looking at your life situation. How busy are you? Do you want this to be a passive investment, or do you want to be truly active in this investment strategy? So see if the extra time essentially is worth it for you to do it yourself, or letting a turnkey provider help find and manage that property for you. All right, guys, I truly hope that helps break down what turnkey rental properties are, how to prepare and protect yourself when you buy turnkey real estate, and then lastly, if turnkey properties are a right investment option for you. Remember, not every investor is the same. Some simply don't have the time and energy, but they are intrigued with the ability to own rental real estate. And that's where these turnkey providers come in. They really make that desire of owning passive income through real estate investment an option for these busy professionals like myself and yourself. Also, every investment is a risk. So you have to weigh all your options, look at your risk tolerance, do your proper due diligence and run your numbers, and then see if this option is right for you. There is no right or wrong, so hopefully this presentation will give you an idea to see if turnkey rental property is a good fit for your investment needs. All right, we are almost done. I have just 2 more slides left. So this is actually my favorite slide. So I want to go over very briefly what is not a turnkey property. So I received this email from a wholesaler about 2 weeks ago advertising an off-market property that is quote unquote turnkey. So if you're looking at this and you live in California or any of those expensive states, you're probably thinking, holy cow, $32,000 for an entire house? What's the catch? Well, $30,000 for a house in the Midwest or the South isn't uncommon at all. But you're right, there's usually a catch. When homes are this cheap, there's usually 2 main reasons. Number 1, it's probably not in a good neighborhood. And 2, it likely needs a lot of work, especially for this one, since it claims that the market rent is $850, which is about a 1.5% rule based on the ARV, or even double, even a 2% rule and more based on the wholesale price. So I'm just going to show you some pictures that the wholesaler sent me so we can just take a look to see how this turnkey property looks on the inside. All right, everyone, I just wanted to show you the photos that the seller sent me. Remember, the listing said that the house was in great condition, that it's a turnkey property, and all it needs is the basement to be repaired. So let's take a look at these photos and see what see what they have for us. As you can tell, this is the exterior. There's some sort of wood rot exterior work that needs to be done. The roof doesn't look new to me. The flooring looks pretty dated. There's some carpet that is pretty dated as well. And this deck probably needs repair for it to be safe. The bathroom doesn't look too bad. The vanity looks in pretty decent shape. The carpet doesn't look too bad either. But then again, you have to ask yourself, what type of home are you buying? What type of investor are you buying? Because if we're just placing any tenant in here, there'll probably be a tenant that's willing to live here and probably pay rent, most likely not at market rent. And for this to even attract a quality renter, you're going to want to update a few of these items and not just the basement. So just want to scroll through this with you very quickly. Okay, so again, they said this is a turnkey property in great condition and only the basement needed to be repaired. All right. Okay, so as you can see in the photos, this property is definitely not turnkey. Remember, the definition of a turnkey rental property is one that is fully rehabbed. It has a new roof, new HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all new painting, all new flooring, appliances, cabinetry, and it's ready for a tenant to be placed and will cash flow. Now, many sellers will market a property as rent ready, and this rent ready will attract many new investors. But essentially, rent ready just means that the property is inhabitable. And inhabitable just means that the property requires the least amount of work done to place a person that is willing to pay money to live in that property. Now, if you're in a D-class area and all the other properties in that area are very like each other, they all look the same, and they all have the same rent-ready condition, you may not have trouble finding a tenant. They have no choice. All the properties kind of look the same. However, they may not be a high-quality tenant. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. So your investment will be a little bit more stressful. They may not pay on time. They may not have very good jobs. So it's a very riskier investment. Secondly, if you do buy these rent-ready properties, in this case, and just like the seller recommended, just fix the basement because everything else is great, and do nothing else, you got to be prepared for a lot of maintenance calls and also be prepared to replace all the major components of the house in a year or so. So this is my truly number one pet peeve, and that's why this slide is my favorite. When I see sellers advertise that their properties are rent ready or quote unquote turnkey, and in reality they are not, it really makes me upset, especially when new investors look at these properties and think that they are getting a good deal when in fact they're not. So based on my experience, this property probably will need about $20,000 to $30,000 in repair, to get everything in brand new condition. And let's say you do that. Well, if that's the case, might as well buy a turnkey property from a reputable turnkey provider. Let's say you bought it for $30,000. You put $30,000 into it. You're all in for $60,000. It's only worth $58,000. So if you do that, you actually just overpaid for a property that you rehabbed, put all your money and time and energy rehabbing this property, and now have not captured any type of equity just because you overpaid for essentially a piece of junk. So I just wanted to, let everyone know that just because a property is marketed as turnkey does not, in fact, mean it is a truly turnkey property. So make sure you do your due diligence, look at pictures, and if you're not really sure, get a third-party inspector out, and they will send you photos and let you know the condition of all the major mechanics, so you know how much to offer. And then if this property is even worth it for you to do yourself, or just pass it up and just buy yourself another property, or go to a turnkey property through a provider. All right, so we're getting to the final few slides of my presentation. I'm going to make this short and sweet. So in summary, do your research, get into analysis paralysis, learn how to run your numbers, pick a market that you feel comfortable in, one that you see yourself growing. Make sure you talk to many investors, talk to turnkey providers, interview property manager companies, and see what they have to offer, and then compare all of them. Lastly, with all this work, does it take time away from your family? I consider myself a pretty active real estate investor while I'm searching and when I'm renovating my properties. And honestly, it does take a lot of time away from my son. So I do most of my real estate when he's sleeping. So how can you manage your real estate portfolio while also having a full-time job? So definitely something to think about. Remember, time is definitely money. If you can do it yourself and efficiently and correctly, then I do encourage you to do it. If not, find a team, leverage their network and skills, and let them do it for you, such as a turnkey provider. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in. I know that was a long presentation, but I really wanted to make sure I get all the points out there. I'm going to now hand it over to Merv Plank. Again, he is the co-founder and the CEO of a turnkey rental company called Alliance Wealth Builder, based in Birmingham, Alabama. His presentation will go over what his company has to offer to investors who are looking for turnkey real estate properties, and he'll also walk you through his process, as well as go over a few pro formas, so that way you can understand the returns that are expected with a turnkey property. So if you have any questions, you can find me on Odeon Finance. Here's my email. You can also follow me on my Instagram, house_hustle. This has been a really fun presentation to prepare, and I truly hope it will kickstart your journey into real estate investing, whether it be with a turnkey provider or with your own network of people. So Merv has an amazing presentation ahead for you. I know you'll really enjoy it now that you have all the background information on what turnkey real estate is all about and what it is not. So good luck, everyone, and happy and safe investing.
Hi, my name is Merv Plank. I'm the CEO of Alliance Wealth Builders in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm going to spend some time today just sharing a little bit about what turnkey real estate is all about, because that's the core business that we're in. And of course, we consider ourselves real estate investors, and anybody that's invested in real estate consider themselves that. But we have a process we go through, and I'll share that with you as we discuss this. But I want to make sure that we try to communicate just how that process works and why you may or may not want to consider it, because it's kind of a new thing. It's been around about probably 15 years or so. But you'll see as we go through it that it might be right for you if you have a busy lifestyle, and if you have lots of time on your hands and you got money to spend doing this, you might want to do it yourself. So just give me a second to get my screen up here so we can talk about the presentation. As I said, we are in Birmingham, Alabama, and we are a full-service real estate investment company. We are founded on principles of high investment quality properties, and want to make sure you understand that there's a lot of different tiers in this whole investment phase that you could go into. From you can go to the cheapest. You can buy a house in Birmingham for $15,000 or $20,000. You can put $15,000 or $20,000 in it. You can probably rent it for $600 a month, but I can't guarantee what kind of client you're going to get to rent it. So kind of starts there and goes up to, You know, you can spend as much as $200,000 for a property that's probably going to rent for $1,500, $1,600, $1,700 a month. That's kind of the top side of the rental properties in our market. Now, we oversee the steps of the investment process, which really is part of what makes this turnkey: the acquisition, the renovation, of course, the sales of the property, the tenant placement, and then the ongoing property management. You'll see down here at the bottom of this slide, there are two logos. One is for AWB, that's Alliance Wealth Builders. The other's for First Choice Properties, LLC, that is our property management business. If you think about Birmingham, Alabama, and by the way, there's only certain markets that are really fit for this kind of cash flow investment, because there are a lot of markets, and a lot of these markets are either in the south or the central part of the country, such as, you know, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, Little Rock, Arkansas, Memphis, Tennessee, Birmingham, Alabama. A lot of those markets are good for what we're talking about here, because the price of the housing versus the available rent price are very favorable for investing. If you go to other markets where you go outside of let's say you buy a house for $100,000 and it rents for $1,000, that's called the 1% rule. If you go outside of that kind of area and get to a $200,000 house that rents for $1,500, now you're probably in a cash flow underwater situation. Birmingham, Alabama is a good market. There are a lot of reasons, as you can see on this slide, why you should look at Alabama. While things are improving in Birmingham, they are still always in the South. Things move slowly. So it's not like we're going to go through the roof on appreciation or any of that kind of thing. What we're really talking about here is cash flow. So things are steady in good times and in bad times. And of course, one of the things about Alabama, it is a very tax-friendly state. And our downtown is improving. So I just wanted to point out a couple of things here about Birmingham that you probably would like to know if you're interested here. Of course, the background of Birmingham, it was called the Magic City because it had a lot of coal, iron ore, and limestone. They all exist together, and it created the iron and steel industry here in the late 1800s. And so the city grew quickly because of that and appeared like magic and overnight, and it's called the Magic City. So now it's primarily an industrial center, but you can see down here at the bottom, as of 2013, we ranked the 5th in the U.S. in car and light truck production. And that's really because of people like Mercedes, Toyota, Honda, Hyundai, those companies coming in and establishing manufacturing facilities in the state of Alabama. So there's a lot going on in terms of car production there, but it's primarily foreign car production. It's not U.S. based. It's foreign car companies producing cars in the U.S. We have a collection of a lot of golf courses. Our state has put much money into the development of some really beautiful golf courses. And so that's kind of a side note, but it attracts a lot of people from other countries to come to Alabama to put manufacturing facilities in. And of course, Barber Motorsports is the largest motorcycle museum in the world, honestly. And we also have an IndyCar race here in Alabama. So racing is kind of a big deal in the South, as you probably know. We also have a driving school here. And we also have a motorcycle race and a vintage motorcycle race at this same track. And of course, there's always Talladega, which is known around the world as a premier NASCAR track. The stats for Birmingham is the number one employer in our city is the University of Alabama, Birmingham, known as UAB. It's part of the University of Alabama. It is the Birmingham branch, and it's primarily medical training there, medical education. but out of that comes a really high level of medical professions. So we've got 70 foreign companies here in Birmingham, and we've got actually a lot of really good, solid, mid-sized companies here is what it boils down to. And the other interesting thing about Birmingham is that about 40% of our population rents, over 40%. So there's a lot of renters to rent the houses that we buy and renovate and rent. Cost of living is low, cost of housing is low, and the taxes are low. So all that kind of makes a perfect storm for investing in real estate here in Birmingham. The income taxes are also low, 10% lower than the national average. So there's just a lot of good economic reasons for investing here. The median house price is $185,000. The median family income is $51,000, so it's not that bad. But our average house price is way less than the average U.S. price. If you talk about a turnkey property, the average price of that's probably $110,000 to $120,000. And of course, the average renter occupied properties are 44% higher than other places in the United States. So that's a pretty good case for buying a rental property in Birmingham. Of course, you might recognize some of these names. They're some of the names of businesses we have here. Regions, Saks Fifth Avenue, UAB we mentioned, Hyundai I mentioned, Mercedes and Honda, Health South, and of course some banking concerns as well. About Alliance Wealth Builders, let's talk just a little bit about that. We started in 2012 in the turnkey space. We were investing before that, but we decided to take this turnkey route in 2012. Jennifer Brown, my business partner, and I, we're both active in the business. Actually, she runs the property management business. I'm overseeing the Alliance Wealth Builder side, the investment side. But in that time, we've rehabbed over 750 houses in and around Birmingham. And as I said before, we do use the full turnkey model to acquire, renovate, rent, sell, and manage. We have a full service property management business, which is called First Choice. 95% of the owners of our properties are out of state. So if you're worried about how can I know what's going on with a property in Birmingham if I live in California or Florida or New York, obviously that's our job, to keep you informed and keep your renter in there, keep your renter happy, keep the property in good repair. So our functions there are obviously collecting rent, managing move-ins and move-outs, take care of repairs with our team, be the eyes and ears for you, and communicate monthly on the status of your property. And on demand as needed. If you need to know something in the middle of the month, that's no problem. We have full-time people that take care of the communications with the owners. So we try to make sure that that really works smoothly. So our property management stats, as of today, we manage over 500 properties. The average duration of a lease is 1 year because we only do 1-year leases. Some companies do 2-year leases. We have found that if you need to do an eviction or anything like that, it's easier to have a 1-year lease because every day you're closer to the end of that. 80% of the people that we rent to re-sign their leases every year. So we have a good re-up rate. And the stabilized occupancy rate is 96.8%. So our average rental price is about $950 a month. And so we've got lots and lots of experience in taking care of properties. That's what we do. So a couple of questions about turnkey providers that you might be thinking about at this point. Turnkey providers come in all forms. The best turnkey providers manage their own property. If you really think about this, if I buy the house, I fix the house, I rent the house, I sell the house, and I'm responsible for managing it month to month after that, I've established a very long-term relationship with this property and hopefully with the owner that owns the property after we sell it. Um, there are turnkey providers out there that call themselves turnkey, that actually just buy the house and fix the house and sell the house and turn it over to somebody else to manage. At that point, the person that actually did the original work is gone out of the picture. And we have found, actually, we knew kind of from the beginning because we have some friends around the country that are in this business that told us early on we had to do our own property management. So another question you might be asking is what should I look for? If I wanted to go this route, what should I look for in a provider? Well, part of it is the length of time in business because the bad ones don't last very long. The good ones stay around. The longest one I think that is around started in 2010 or maybe a little before that. So they've been around almost 15 years. So the other thing is what investor associations they belong to, because we belong to a association of real estate investors that's really from around the country, about 120 companies that we trade ideas with. We go visit them, we learn from them. And so we've learned things like we need to set construction standards for our rehabs, and we just don't deviate from them. It doesn't matter whether we're fixing it for the first time or if somebody's moved out and we got to fix a few things, we always try to bring it back to our standards. Another question you might be thinking about is, what does it cost me to enter this? What's the lowest price house we sell? Let me say this. In our market, we don't go below an $800 a month rent rate. The reason for that is it keeps us out of the bad neighborhoods. As you go down in rent, and I've actually owned properties that rent for $500 a month, and I can tell you there are neighborhoods you or I don't want to be in. And I've since gotten rid of those properties because they just tear the property up. The rent rate is low. It's got the same headaches as an 800 plus a month, and it's a lot less of them. So, and you get a better class of tenant, obviously, that in 800 and above. So that keeps us in a better neighborhoods. Our top rent rate is somewhere around $1,500 a month. So we've got all those different ranges. And of course, the price of the house itself has to do with the rent rate. We also believe that you must have a third-party inspection on any property you buy. So if you're getting ready to buy a property and you put it under contract, before you close on that contract, you need to have a third-party inspection that will give you a full assessment of the property. And a lot of times when we do that, when somebody does a third-party inspection, which they usually do, and they almost always do, we almost insist on it. It helps both of us because we have to fix anything that we agree needs to be fixed. And sometimes we miss a thing or two, but the third-party inspection is extremely important if you're going to buy a turnkey property or really any property. So let me give you some examples of these properties that I'm talking about, because I want to tell you a little bit about the whole process, what the numbers look like, why you might want to consider this. First of all, we take care of the big four. We call it the big four. The roof has got to be 5 years or better. Often the roofs are new, but the inspector will tell you what they think of the roof. The HVAC, and of course we're in Alabama, we're in the South, you've got to have an air conditioning system. We don't have any houses that we manage without them, so it's probably one of the most important assets to the house and one of the most single expensive assets of the house. So when we buy a house and fix it, it's almost always new unless it's just been replaced in the last year or so. But we want to make sure that's good. So, and of course that's inspected. The plumbing, we upgrade the plumbing and it's inspected. The electrical's upgraded and inspected. And of course we require an inspection by a professional before the sale anyway. And most of our municipalities now require that the municipality actually comes in and does the inspection before we can even begin to sell the property. So or rent the property. Now you might think about, okay, well, you've done all this. Now what are you doing now? Well, we're all the time we're trying to find a tenant. Of course, we can't put that tenant in until the municipality has inspected the property. So when we buy a property, First Choice starts marketing it for rent almost immediately, and actually manages the property throughout the process. So First Choice manages for Alliance Wealth Builders and whoever buys the property. So let's look at some of these properties. 1617 Third Place. This is a brick house. You can see it's a brick house. It's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house. It rents for $1,100 a month. It's fully rehabbed. It's 1,404 square feet. You can see it's, a pretty good looking house. When we renovate them, obviously kitchens are important, bathrooms are important, but the rest of the house is important as well. But you'll notice something as you go through these pictures, that kitchens are white, the trim is white, the walls are tan, the floors are pretty much the same color, the ceiling light fixtures are all pretty much the same. Why is that? Because we have a process whereby we've decided what we're going to use in every house we do, and we use the same light fixtures, the same colors, the same everything all the way through the house. That keeps us from spending a lot of time thinking about, okay, so what color is this going to be? What color is that going to be? So, so this would be a typical kitchen. The living room here obviously has no furniture, but you see again, it's all white trim. Floors are beige, the ceilings are white. And if something gets beat up, hole in the wall, whatever, we can come in and patch it, and we've got the same color paint on every vehicle we have out there, so they can patch it, fix it, and get on quickly. This would be a bedroom, which looks very similar. Obviously, again, the trim is all white. So let's look at some of the numbers real quick. So this house rents for $1,100 a month. The purchase price in this house is $121,900. Now, the first mortgage, which is the only mortgage that we would put on this property, and I've shown all these numbers in a finance format. So if you're thinking about buying a house, you'd want to think about, okay, what's my down payment? Well, in this house, it's $24,000. The closing costs would be somewhere around $7,300. So I need to bring about almost $32,000 to the table to close in this house, this $121,000 house. It shows you the cost per square foot. And then there's some other ratios you might want to take a look at as you go through there. The loan amount would be about $97,000. It would be a 30-year term. And we try to be conservative when we do this. The interest rate that we have put in the pro forma, and the pro forma here is just basically, that's exactly what it is. It's not actual numbers, because I'm pretty sure that if you've got any kind of good credit at all these days, you can get an interest rate better than 5%. But we use that to figure the payment, which is $523.51. And of course, the rent's going to be $1,100. So you can see what the spread is there. We've used, down on the bottom section here, it says assumptions. We've used an appreciation rate of 3%. And some years we even have trouble getting that. So, the price of the house really doesn't go up and down that much. Vacancy rate 5%. Again, that's a pretty conservative projection. So you can see all of the different assumptions we've made in figuring these numbers, and they come out on the other side, on the right side of this page, which says, okay, the gross rent's, $1,100. We're going to, because of the 5% vacancy rate, we're going to lose $55 of that. So the operating income is going to be $1,045. Now, the vacancy loss, obviously, when it's occupied, you're not losing vacancy. But what I'm suggesting to you is, if you buy this house, that you put these amounts away so that when they are vacant, you've got good cash flow. And if they don't go vacant, good for you. Then there's cleaning and maintenance. As you can see, insurance is not that expensive, $750 a year. Management fee is 10%. Now, I will say this, if you buy one house, it's 10%. If you own two houses, it's 10%. But if you own three, it goes to 9%. We also figure the taxes at 10%. And we try to be conservative on our tax analysis as well, because you don't really know exactly the tax number until you actually buy the house and register with the county. So the total operating expenses based on this are $321. Your net operating income is $724 minus your payment, comes down to $201 of monthly cash flow, or $2,400 a year. Basically, you think about the $2,400 a year and your $31,000 investment. That's the numbers you use to calculate what your return is. So I hope that helps. I have not used any cash projections, cash purchase projections in this presentation at all. So everything we're looking at here is a finance pro forma. Now let's look at another one, Rose Drive. This one's a little less expensive house, built in 1954, just a little less than 1,000 square feet. It's a 3-1 again, and we try to stay with a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house or better. So sometimes we get a 4-2, sometimes we get a 3-2, but mostly they're 3-1s. And that's kind of the way it is here in Birmingham. So again, this is the kitchen. You probably notice it's white. You probably notice the walls are beige. You probably notice it looks a lot like the other one, except it's a little smaller. The house is actually a little smaller. This would be the living room. Again, looks very similar. You notice the light fixtures are the same. Now, when we upgrade electrical, for example, we'll take all those light switches and all those wall plugs and we'll replace everything throughout the house. So when somebody moves in, it feels like when they plug something in, they've got a brand new receptacle to plug it into. And again, the bedrooms look very similar, not that much different. This particular house, this 149 Rose Drive, has a purchase price of $91,900. Again, the down payment's $18,000. The buying cost is $5,500. So you're really remember the last one was almost $32,000. This one is about $24,000. So you can see you can get into a house for less than that. And this monthly rent on this house will be $845 versus the $1,100 we had on the prior house. The rest of the numbers, they kind of spill out as you can see them. The payment on here under the mortgage section, you'll see is $394 a month, 30-year amortization, and a 5% interest rate. A good friend of mine who's in the mortgage business usually can get people better rates than this. So, and I know that Julie also knows him. So if you need help with that, obviously we can get that done. Up at the top, you'll see those numbers all spill out pretty much the same. But at the end of the day, the net performance is the operating income is $550 a month. And the mortgage payment is $395. So you can see the cash flow is $155. The house value is a little less. Cash flow is a little less. Everything's a little less. But you can see as you look at this that you can invest less, you get a little less, but it's still a good solid turnkey property in a good solid area. So at the end here, I'm going to show you one more, and this one is not going to be rehab. This is going to be I'm going to kind of take you through one in process. You can see the trucks are in front of the house. You can see the paint can sitting out front. Built in 1959. It's almost 1,700 square feet. It's a 3-2. It's in progress. It's $1,050 a month in rent. And this is the way the process looks when you look at the kitchen. It's kind of messy. But what we're doing here is we're repainting the cabinets. And that's what we often do, almost always do, not always. Sometimes the kitchen's in such bad shape, or sometimes it's just missing completely. But if it's not, we're going to repaint it. make it look all shiny and new again. And you can see that the living room is also in progress, and you can see we've painted the ceiling, but we painted the trim, but we haven't painted the walls yet. So we're getting ready to do that. And then this particular house, as you also can see, has got hardwoods on the floor. We're going to resand those hardwoods because they're not the veneer kind. They're the thick hardwood kind because they were put in 1959. So they'll be good and solid, and we can just refinish them and make them look great. And of course, here's the bedroom in progress as well. You can see the whole house actually has hardwood. So we'll not put carpet over this. We'll just put hardwood in. So remember, the first one was 121.9. The second one was 91.9. This one's 111. So this one's kind of in the middle of the other two. I won't spend a lot of time taking you through these numbers, but again, here, instead of 32 or 24, we're around $29,000 initially invested. And but again, in this particular house, the cash flow comes out to 204, which is almost equal to the higher priced one that we showed you for $1,100. But you can see all the rest of the numbers are pretty much the same. If you go on the Alliance Wealth Builders website, you can look at any of the properties we have for sale there. And if you go into that property itself, there will be a sheet like this on every single property we have out there. So this is something we provide as standard. Now, let me just say this. This is no guarantee. We don't guarantee these numbers. You know, everybody's experience is a little different. Many times they're much better than this. Sometimes they're a tiny bit worse. I've seen them all, of course, having managed, you know, over 500 properties, I can see it all. But I want you to know that there's, you know, the good thing about buying properties is that you've actually got a hard asset. It's a house. It's not a stock that somebody in New York has issued that says you may or may not be worth this. This is actually a hard asset. So a couple other things. So these are some of the other houses we finished along the way. We haven't got any of these really sharp looking ones, but these, you know, are the higher end of the properties we do as well, because we're looking here at probably $140,000, $150,000 houses. But, you know, when it's summertime and everything's all primped up, it looks really good. So I wanted to show you a couple of those. So you might be saying to yourself, well, you know, Merv, you do that, and of course you've got to make money. Yes, we do. That's part of our deal. And I'll just tell you up front, we make about $10,000 a house when we sell it. So if you, so there's a couple of things to think about if you decide you would want to do it yourself. And actually, I've had discussions with Julie because she's done a number of them herself. She knows how challenging it is, and they're not local to her. But the first thing you have to think about if you're going to decide to do it yourself is, where's the money going to come from? Because if you're going to go buy a house, a lot of times these, you know, these houses that I'm buying are actually, you know, it's going to take $80,000 or $90,000 just to buy the house and to fix it. So you got to have some money up front. You either have to borrow from somebody, or you got to have it in your own pocket. And I can tell you that if you decide to go to the bank, that's virtually impossible, because if you go to a local bank in your market and tell them you want to buy a house in Birmingham, Alabama for $90,000, they're probably going to look at you like you're crazy. So one way or another, you're going to have to front it all. Now, if you buy a house from us, you don't even have to think about that part of it, because we take care of that up front. We take care of the money part. We also take care of acquiring the property. So acquiring the property, you know, having bought over 750,000 or 750 houses, we have made mistakes, and we've had to eat them. And, you know, we still make mistakes. Once or twice or three times a year, we just lose money on a house because we blew it. Not always our fault, but sometimes just things we didn't know when we bought the property. But we do enough of them that on the average, it all comes out together. if you acquire a property, you've got to go find it, and then you got to make sure that you understand how much you should pay for the property, because you also need to understand how much it's going to take to fix that property. Because if you ask 10 contractors how much it's going to take to fix that property, they'll give you 10 different answers, and some of them will tell you an answer to get your business, and then they'll find a way to jack it up after you've talked to them. So managing a contractor from afar is not an easy thing either. Of course, again, we do that for you. As far as rehabbing the property, you have to make the contract, you have to manage the contractor. We again do that for you. Then after you get the house fixed, you got to find a tenant. And so you've got to find the tenant and screen them, or you have to hire a property manager to do that, which is not doing it yourself really either. So, but again, we do that for you, and this is all under one roof. The ongoing management, you'd have to do it yourself or hire a property manager. We do that for you. And as far as the actual maintenance, let's say the HVAC breaks, it's always interesting when the summer comes around and the weather gets hot. We have lots and lots of fun fixing air conditioners or getting them going and all that kind of thing. So, so we do that for you. So you have to decide if you want to do it yourself and go through all that, and if it's really worth $10,000 to you to have somebody do it for you. So that's really a lot of things to consider if you decide to, if you're thinking about doing it yourself. We've bought quite a few houses from people who started out to be do-it-yourselfers and decided in the middle of the process that they didn't want to continue to do that. So why should you consider buying a turnkey property? Well, if you have a very busy schedule, you might want to think about that. If you don't know where to start, if you don't know where to grab a hold, if you don't, I would say that you shouldn't even start this if you don't have $100,000 of cash readily available to do it yourself. Otherwise, I've actually shown you the actual numbers you need to actually buy a turnkey property. And if you don't have the contacts in the market you want to invest in, you should obviously consider a turnkey investment. And I can tell you, I have relationships with other turnkey investors in other markets if there's other markets you're interested in. And those, of course, who want passive income for the least amount of time and energy, because really, what I always say, if you own a property, you shouldn't go look at your portal, which you have a portal that you can see what's going on with your property every day. You should look at it every 2 weeks or at the minimum once a month. If you want instant cash flow, that's the way to do it with the turnkey property, because you put your $25,000, $30,000, $32,000 down, and it's like you turn on the cash flow. So the other thing I would say to you is that if you're willing to commit to a 5-year minimum investment, turnkey approach is a good one. You should never buy a house in another market if you're thinking of anything less than a 5-year minimum investment, because it's a long-term deal. And I can just tell you, I've seen people that have come in, have bought a house, a year and a half later, they say, oh, I think I want to sell now. I think the market's gone up. Well, the market's gone up 3%. That's not enough to even cover your acquisition costs. And of course, those who are ready for a journey to acquire 5 to 10 houses over time, that is the best approach to creating wealth, is to have a number of properties, because it's like if you have 5 to 10, if one goes vacant, you got 4 more that are producing cash for you every month anyway. So those are some of the reasons that you should consider looking at the turnkey approach. So you can contact myself at this number or Stephanie Bethay. Stephanie is our sales director, and she works with me every day. You see our main office number here, and of course, Alliance Wealth Builders is our main website for our business. I'm going to, since we're not live, I'm going to make a couple more comments, and then I'm going to go. But I just want to say this. Real estate investing is not for everyone. If you're totally risk averse, if you're scared of losing a faucet or scared of a $100 repair, you probably should not consider real estate investing, period. And if you've done any investing at all, you probably have some sense of what your real estate or what your risk tolerance is. And so having a risk tolerance for real estate, now I've been in this business for almost 10 years now, so I don't see it as a big risk because I've ridden through the down markets and the up markets and now through the COVID market. And, we're still sailing right along. So I'm happy to be in the real estate business. But if you have questions or comments, of course, Julie can point them in my direction. I'll do my best to answer them. If you're looking at other markets other than Birmingham, I can point you in some of those right directions. But I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this and to think about turnkey real estate investing. Thank you and have a great day.